Good afternoon. Some of you may be surprised what I'm doing here. Thank you. Three questions came up many times. What is carbon? What is sequestration? And how does sequestration happen? So I think those three questions, we will try to answer them again. First of all, what is carbon? There are several types of carbon. So when you talk about what is carbon, make sure you know what we are talking about. A carbon is gray carbon. Gray carbon is what? It is in the atmosphere. Then we have red carbon. Red carbon is what we burn, combustion. Then combustion happens and increase. Then we have green carbon, that is photosynthesis, that goes from the atmosphere. Then we have brown carbon. This is carbon which is in the soil. And brown carbon also respires just like green carbon does. Then we have a blue carbon. And blue carbon is in the ocean or in the lakes. And that's a different carbon. Then we have white carbon. Soil carbon is brown and white, both. White is inorganic carbon. And then we have black carbon, charcoal, biochar. And all these different types of carbons can be managed differently. So when you talk about carbon sequestration, make sure we understand which carbon sequestration we are talking about and what are the transformation between them. So this is one confusion. When you talk about carbon sequestration, which carbon are you talking? Even soil carbon sequestration is brown and white. Then we have mechanism of carbon sequestration. There are different mechanisms of carbon. One is geologic sequestration, where you take carbon dioxide and you inject into the ground about a mile deep. It started in oil wells, coal mines, saline aquifer. This is geologic sequestration. Then there is a chemical sequestration. You take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and convert it into chemicals. It is very stable. La Salmo National Lab has a very strong program on chemical sequestration. Then we have oceanic sequestration, where you put fertilizer in the ocean and ocean plants sequester carbon. Then you have biotic sequestration. That is photosynthesis. So Vetiver is primarily biotic sequestration. And it is partly also pedologic sequestration. When photosynthesis happens by plants, it's biotic photosynthesis, and all of these interact together. So when you talk about sequestration, make sure you are very clear which mechanism we are talking about. And sometimes confusion is created by a term measurement, monitoring, verification, leaching, and all those. These terms apply to geoengineering, but sometimes we begin to use them for agriculture. And that is inappropriate use of geoengineering terminology for agriculture. And this is another part of confusion. Then we have photosynthesis. This is what Vetiver does. And photosynthesis total every year is 123 gigaton. It's a very large amount. But at the end of the year, the amount which stays in the ground, we call net biome productivity, is only 3. So if you ask 123 was photosynthesis, but what remains is only 3, that is what counts, not the total. And that's what we were talking yesterday. Coming back very quickly to soil carbon sequestration, there are 2 types of soil carbon: organic, black, and inorganic, white. The white carbon, which is inorganic, is very large amount in dry climates. And dry climate is about 50% of the earth. That's very important. And on a geologic time scale, this black and white carbon interact together. So if you're looking at the soil carbon sequestration, it has several components: organic and inorganic. Again, be sure you know which one you're talking about. Organic has different types: live, undecomposed, decomposed. Decomposed can be protected, can be unprotected. It can be dissolved, it can be particulate, it can be also mineral associated. The mineral associated is the one which stays for a long period of time in the soil. Then we have inorganic carbon. Inorganic carbon, which I mentioned, white carbon. It's called pedogenic and lithogenic. Lithogenic is which came from the rocks. Pedogenic is which can be newly formed. And the newly formed called secondary carbonates. And I'll show you a picture of the secondary carbonate in a moment, which are very, very important in terms of process of... now, on geologic time scale, the secondary formation of carbonates has been the clock, that thermostat that regulates the temperature of the earth. And this is that reaction. It's called Urey reaction. And geologic part is one, but when the secondary carbonates are formed in a dryland soil, this is how they look like. They are granules and films, and you can see them. This is also soil carbon sequestration. So you have to be very clear which one you are talking about, which one you are measuring, and how you are measuring it. Then we have, lastly, I know I should leave this stage. This is what I was talking about yesterday. Let us say vetiver piles, like over there. I want to make them into humus. That was not sequestration, that was photosynthesis. This is sequestration. To transform that into humus is a biochemical transformation, and it changes the CN ratio of that material to 12. It changes the C to P ratio of that material from 200 to 50. It changes the CS ratio. This is sequestration or long time, not that one. And you shouldn't confuse that part. This is the one that stays in the soil on a longer period of time. Then question came up, rate of carbon sequestration. I've been listening rate 100 tons per hectare. The maximum rate of organic carbon sequestration is in the wetlands, and it's about 1.5 ton per hectare per year. The next rate is CRP. Those of you know from the US, you know Conservation Reserve Program. It's about 1 ton per hectare. We talk about turf lawns in the golf courses, it's about 0.5 ton. No-till is about 300 to 500 kilogram per hectare. Rangeland is about 200, 150 kilograms. Those are the rates of soil carbon sequestration. When you talk about 5 tons and 10 tons and 20 tons, I do not know what we are talking about photosynthesis. Very quickly, these rates depend on the climate, and you have a dry climate and wet climate, and when your climate is different, rates are very low, and rates are only high in a wet and cold climate. Thailand is not wet and cold. Thailand is wet and really drier part, so rates will be medium, like 500 kilogram per hectare per year. I think this is what I wanted to mention to clarify what is carbon, what is sequestration, and how it is sequestered. I hope that that would clarify those, but if you need to read detail, I do teach a class which is 16 weeks, and there are 5 hours per week. It's 80 hours. I try to squeeze that in 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Rattan Lal.